All right, can you state your name and spell it, please?
My name is Gary Bussell, Garybusell.
My name is Chris Reedy. Today's date is June 23rd. It's 1 p.m., 2015. We're at the studios of WIPB at Ball State University for the Ford Olivana project. Can you tell us where you were born and when?
I was born in Newcastle, Indiana, May the 3rd of 1944.
Tell me a little bit about your childhood and growing up. Was your family, did it have a history of military service?
I grew up around Mount Summit, Indiana, in the country, kind of a farm, not a farm boy. I lived in the country, worked for a lot of farmers, hoeing beans and doing that sort of thing in the early 60s and late 1970s. And we had, my father had worked at the steel mill during World War II, and he was a fellow that mixed the batches for the poor, and this was at Ingersoll in Newcastle, and they were making armor plate. And so, to his chagrin, he was given a deferment because it was a war critical product. And then so that's basically the lineage of the service of my family previously.
How did you come to join the U.S. Army?
Well, when I graduated from Mount Summit High School in 1963, and I went to work at the transformer plant here at Muncie, which was Westinghouse. And I decided, along with a brother, we had joined the Indiana National Guard, and then that was in 1965. And it was a way to get the commitment in. At that time, there wasn't a lot of news about Vietnam. It was kind of in its earlier period. So I joined the Guard in 64 and was married in 65. And so I was going to have a 6-year commitment of going to drills and summer camp once a year and have the military obligation put in.
So what was your reaction when you found...
Sorry, Chris. Richard just wanted to make sure that your glasses are where they normally are. I think he's thinking.
Well, we did a lot of work with the nose for a while. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't really see.
Wherever you normally wear them, is that where you normally wear them? You have them?
I don't know. We were doing a lot of work here.
Yeah. that looks
There.
That's comfortable.
There. There you go.
Okay, you're good.
Okay.
I'll start over. What was your reaction when you found out that your National Guard unit was going to be sent to Vietnam?
Well, there was some previous activities that we got involved with that kind of leaned towards a situation where we knew there was an increased involvement along. And I joined in 64. By 65, we were at Newcastle, and it was a quiet little go to weekend drills, get in your green suit and go off to Atterbury and play soldier for 2 days and come back. Well, they offered up that you could go to jump school, paratroop school, instead of going to the summer camp. So you blame your friends, and Tom Razor and Ted Dunn says, why don't we go to jump school? That's only 2 weeks. We jump out of airplanes, we get the wings, and come back, and that'll be better than going up to Michigan and being eaten by mosquitoes. And so we went off to jump school. Well, when we came back to Newcastle from jump school, they said, well, you're not here anymore. You've been transferred to Greenfield, Indiana. There's a long-range patrol company they're building. And so, so we started over there. Now it was training every other weekend. And the next time a summer camp came up, we didn't go to summer camp. We went to Fort Sherman, Panama, and went through jungle survival school and training. And so, but we're still reservists. And as we're talking to the training committee down there, we're building our bohíos in the jungle. That's some pretty rough country, and that's a pretty mean set of training. But we're building our little overnight rest area one night, and this sergeant from the training committee says, when are you guys going to Vietnam? And we just grin and says, oh, we're reservists. We're going to do this and go back home and go back to our reserve outfit. Well, the sergeant said, son, you don't understand. They don't put people through this school that don't go to Vietnam. And lo and behold, about 3 weeks after we came home from there, I went back to work at Westinghouse. I'm working the day shift. Fella from Gaston went to come in on second shift, and he comes up to me and says, "Hey, you've been called up. You're going to the Vietnam." And I said, "Sewell, you're crazy. We're just reservists." And by the time I got home, I heard it on the radio that we had been activated. Well, and the government sent you a set of orders that said, "You're hereby called to active duty for a period of 2 years unless earlier released or later extended." Now that sounds like a government document. And so we were called up, and in, I believe, May of '68, we were left Stoutfield, Indiana, and headed for Fort Benning, Georgia then.
And at Fort Benning, you received additional training?
We trained for another 6 months as long-range patrol unit. Now our unit was 204 men, that's a company. And we got really and as the Army said later, was the best trained unit they deployed, because we'd already had several years of the basics. And then we trained with the SAS, the British Special Air Service. Now there's some rugged individuals. And we went to Elgin Air Force Base in the swamps. We went to Dahlonega Mountains, trained in mountain rappelling, and our CO was extreme, so we jumped every month at least 2 times, and we were sent off to everybody that needed any special training was sent out to other Army facilities for specialized training. We all went through some Ranger training. We had regular tabbed Rangers with us, and we trained for the 6 months until November of '68.
How did you feel? I mean, when you think you're in a reservist unit and you're married, and then the next thing you know, you're getting not just orders to deploy to Vietnam, but you're getting specialized training in a dangerous situation.
Well, it was really done naturally, and I guess now to look back upon it was a little surprising. These boys were all contacted by telephone. "Hey, you've been called up. Come to the armory this weekend. We start getting ready." And as I say, 204, every one of them showed up. Nobody had to go hunt up anybody. Now some of these guys of a later vintage had just joined the Guard in '68. They were in Ball State, they were going to school, they had jobs, and the draft was coming. You needed to find something if you wanted to control your life, so they had just joined the Guard. Some of them came right back from their AIT, their first 6 months of active duty, come right to the Armory and getting ready to go to war. This was kind of a shock. They said, join the Guard, do 6 months of active duty, and spend the remainder with your hometown unit. Well, it looks like your hometown unit's going to be in Long Binh, Vietnam. And there weren't many reservists called up during the war. We were the only combat infantry unit in the call-up. There was some artillery, some transportation, some others, but to be a straight infantry company, we were the only infantry company to be called up or serve in Vietnam from the reserves.
Infantry and LRPs.
LRPs, long range patrol. Now there's 2 kinds. There was LRRP and LRP, where LRRP was long range reconnaissance patrol. And in that, you don't make contact with the enemy, you observe, count, be scattered out among them. But when we got to Vietnam, our new CO, Major Heckman, who was a West Point major, had just got his regular Army unit of doing this dissolved, and we were their replacement. He says, "I don't need LRRP. I know where they're at. You're going out to do the service to them." And it's now LRP, Long Range Patrol. And to give you an idea, this is the '60s, and long NGs, no good, not going. These were the terms. We got to Kelly Hill and Fort Benning, and we were a lot more wound up than the draftees. And so we had to get a reputation that we were not sluggish or subpar. And so it was done strongly. In the jungle operations school, 98% of our guys qualified as jungle expert, which you had to come through navigation night in the jungle and escape and evasion, and it was some pretty intense training. But as it was written later in several books, as done articles on our unit, it said we are akin to the Civil War units, which you get to thinking about it. You all came from the same town, like the units made up to serve the Civil War. We knew each other. We knew their wives, their kids, what kind of Chevelle you drive, and how big the engine was. And this was putting half the unit was in Greenfield and half the unit was in Evansville, and then we'd meet and train. It was all Indiana boys. That's why it ended up being called the Indiana Rangers. But this was kind of a double-edged sword. You knew these guys really well. And then you trained 5, 6 guys in these teams. They were inseparable in training for 6 months and almost a half a year before that. And now you were going into combat. And the Army wanted to dissolve us, send us as individual replacements to different Army units. They knew the problem here. If you sent 200 guys from Greenfield in the same spot and something went bad, well, 6 o'clock news was bad enough the way it is. Imagine how it'd be in Indiana. But our state and Governor Whitcomb, Governor at that time, says, oh no, you took them as a set, you keep them as a set. We're not letting that happen. And so they kind of had to suck it up, and maybe that's why we got the amount of training we had, but we stayed together. Now there's ramifications of that later on that get pretty hard.
Yeah.
Because you knew you had to go back to the same hometown. And if you came back, you better be able to tell them the real story.
Yeah.
And you're talking about brotherhood at a level that not many people get to know.
I've talked to several soldiers who went over as replacements. The gentleman we just had here today, it was very private war. I went over by myself, and I came back by myself. And he's talked about camaraderie and unit cohesion within the platoon he had.
That's as far as your eye can see.
Yeah.
When you're there, the global concept of what you're into is not existent. It means nothing. It's the guy here, the 15 men you close to, or your team, your group, your people, and that's who you're there for. And that's the way it's got to get. You have to be committed to the folks you brought with you.
Well, it means even more for your unit.
Yeah.
I mean, not many units can claim to have the cohesion that your unit had and have those linkages beyond military life.
Right. We know you're writing home to your wife. He's writing home to his wife. We talk to each other. Keep this civilized when you send it home. And we had a few that deviated, told a little too much to wives, and then wives get together. They're living in the same town, trying to find an apartment, trying to keep their insurance. Hell, I had an insurance company cancel car insurance on the wife because your husband's in Vietnam. What world does that mean? And it was a difficult times for the family's home. She took 2 jobs to try to keep a house we had. And you've got your 2 years unless early released or later extended. You know what your commitment window there is. So you had to be careful of what information you sent home. Well, you weren't being censored. They didn't care what you wrote. No. But you had to censor yourselves among your bunch, say. And you're not in that world now. You're in another situation.
Yeah. And you had to Did you have a gentleman's agreement among your comrades to, hey, let's not upset the folks back home? They've got enough on their plate as it is.
To a lot of extent, you filtered what you sent home. You get, so that you didn't paint the picture as bleak as it was. After all, you're supposed to be the male. You're supposed to be putting up with this. You can got time for that later. Don't be leaning on somebody that's got their own problems. But as it went by, as we got to Asia, and we went to camp site we were at, we had to prepare our own campsite because it had been a previous base that had been a missile base. Well, they decided they didn't need missiles in South Vietnam, so we got this compound, and we had to fix it up. I mean, we flew in on a couple C-141s. The gate drops down, and you're at Long Binh, Ban Hoa, and the hot air and smell of the place comes in the back door, and they put you all on put us in some olive drab school buses with chicken wire on the windows to drive us to our compound, and it's all like going to another planet. And then the first night there, you've got your bag of stuff and very little ammunition. You're in an empty compound on the edge of town, and everything is something to be worried about. You don't know what to be worried about. I remember that first night, the 199th Light Infantry, which was adjoining to us, had a red alert. Well, what's a red alert? Well, we all went to defensive positions, and I was down by the helipad with this little fellow. He was an Australian that happened to marry an American girl, joined the Guard, and now he was in Vietnam. He was still an Australian then. But we're there with van der Linden, and we're laying behind some sandbags, and this is the first night in Vietnam, and I'm getting, well, wait a minute. We're just off the bus. And you change it was like changing your anxiety and fear changed to anger. Say, wait a minute, I'm halfway around the world. It's my first night in the woods. We're worried about putting a man on the moon this month and all this, and I'm over here behind a sandbag and this. And you the next morning, as you adjusted daily, you begin to accept that as your new environment.
How long did it take you then to make the full adjustment?
I don't know how full it ever got, but you adjusted within a couple weeks. I mean, we built the compound up. We were very fortunate because we were a ranger company. We were going to put teams in the field out of 4 platoons, 4 to 5 teams in a platoon. And the Major Army had been working these areas till they stopped finding people or setting off booby traps, and they would move them like the 82nd out and put them somewhere else to annoy people. And when they left that neighborhood to Field Force, which we worked for a general, our major answered to a general, and that was our chain of command. So we were insulated even from the Army. And then our teams would be put out in several like county-sized areas, scattered about in ambushes, 5, 6 men in a team, and would watch and wait and initiate on things you could handle. And when we started getting a lot of activity, then we'd back out and they'd go in. So it was like a filter so that you could tell where the enemy forces were moving or coming. But you were there to, when the teams were out there to take on what they could handle. If you can't handle them, we had one fella crawl up within 6 feet of a trail and counted 300 people walk by him and go right over the hill and set up camp. And he could hear them cooking, eating stuff. And he's talking on the radio to the bird dog up above, and they backed them out of there and says, we'll come out and collect you. And then they put an artillery strike in the area. That's the kind of thing they were there for. Or if it was half a dozen, the team would initiate on them right then. Now you got to imagine here, you got 4 platoons and all these teams are out there, and one of them goes into contact with the enemy. We had aerial assets that not many had. We had 4 to 5 Hueys on our compound. That's the school buses, and 2 to 4 Cobra helicopters, which were gunships, and they were committed to only us. They had to be. So if a team got in contact, they'd say, contact 3-5, and a bird dog up above them, a little L-19 Cessna, he'd say contact 3-5, and our TOC, our radio operator, hit the siren, and the helicopter pilots were running for the helicopters, and they were up and off the ground within 3 or 4 minutes and headed towards them. And you only had the 5 guys, and they went out there with 40 magazines apiece, an M60 and 200, several hundred rounds on him, and each other guy carrying a belt, and 2 claymores for every team member. And they could sound like a company-sized element for about 10 minutes. Then you're out of ammo, and you better have other assets available.
Did you have a artillery fire base assigned to your unit?
A lot of times when the teams were out, they knew where the fire bases were at. They had their numbers or radio frequencies and could call in. You could use things that didn't compromise your position. So if they woke up in the morning and saw a breakfast fire smoke over here, they called in artillery, jets. We never were close enough to get a battleship, I don't think. But I mean, you were RCO, very smart man. Said, gentlemen, I've got more here than Eisenhower had on D-Day. You'll use every bit of it if you can, because they need something to do anyhow. They're laying around in the sand pits, and they'd love to have something to shoot at. So if you saw something that you could annoy, and RCO said, no team will ever be put out there anywhere close to any other friendlies. If it's outside your RON, your rest overnight, if it's outside your 5-man perimeter, it's the enemy. I don't want you trying to figure that out. And you can imagine in the black of night, you can't see your hand right here, and somebody's walking up on you.
What about starlight scopes or technology like that?
The starlight scope, I used them on a relay and hill and watch the valleys around it. They weren't really good in the close-in jungle. River watches, things like that. That was our big technology. And you could see a guy smoking a cigarette a mile away. Looked like he's holding a flare. But they were mainly used to observe before you initiated, say on a river watch, you're watching traffic and things. We were well equipped with, every team had an M60 machine gun in it. And then the other guys usually had everybody else had a M14 or an M79 grenade launcher, claymores apiece. They put up booby traps along trails and rivers. Usually these were near LZ areas, which is like a landing zone. A guy goes in, I weighed 137 pounds back then. And we had fellows of the same size, and you carried a rucksack that weighed as much as they did. Well, they're going to be laying out there in the weeds for 5 days if they see nobody, or up until a contact if they do. And so the discipline among these guys, they would never talk. You didn't talk. You'd lay there in the grass where you could bump each other, so to know that one man was always awake. That was always really important. And the RTO, the radio operator, the bird dog up above would get what we called sit reps every so many hours from each team. He'd ask each team, 3-5, you there? He'd just squeeze a handset. He wouldn't talk. He'd just say, yes. 2 times was yes, once was a no to any question he asked. Guys would lay there and it'd take them 2-3 hours to eat their rations so that you don't make any noise. You don't have any fire. You don't smoke any cigarettes. You don't talk. Because the only thing you had going for you, these teams, was that they didn't know you were there. If you ever thought they knew you were there, then that would be compromised. You'd have to be pulled out or something. And of course, any time somebody got in contact, you're pretty much compromised. So the cavalry is on the way to yank you out as soon as they could break contact with the enemy.
Now, if you had a team out and they make contact and you said cavalry's on the way, would that be men from the company?
No.
Would go out, or another Army unit?
No, I'm kind of saying the cavalry. That meant the gunships and the Hueys are on the way. Whoever the duty officer was that day is in a CNC helicopter, command and control. He's flying in a Huey up above the situation, and he kind of choreographs the contact. the team on the ground is engaged. The Cobras are faster, and they're the gunships, and they're headed straight for that team. And they'll keep saying, I'm 9 out, I'm 7 out, I'm 2 minutes out. And Cobra gunship would say, give me a smoke. And the team would pull a smoke grenade and lay it, don't throw it, because you put it in front of it, and he'd say, I tally-ho a yellow. You didn't say, I'm throwing a yellow, because if the bad guys had the radios, they'd throw a yellow. I mean, there was a lot that went into the depth of training and stuff. And then he'd say, I'm 2 out, get your heads down, where do you want your first gun run? They might say, 20 meters to the Sierra of my smoke, from Whiskey to Echo, west to east. You better get that right. And he'd say, okay, get your heads down, and that first Cobra would come across right between you and the enemy, or try to come right across the enemy, or the contact issue. And then they'd split up in twos and keep doing this. And then the RTO on the ground, through instruction from his own team, would take them to the left, or on our left, or to the right. And then the Cobras would start seeing where the situation were. And usually, Charlie broke off right then, because man, 2 Cobras with a couple tons of ordnance to expend. I'm messing with 5 guys, who needs this? And usually the contact would break. If it didn't, then that's concerning, because that meant they were in mass, or there's more of them. So once that contact was broken, then the firing stopped. There was 2 other Hueys out there to bring the team out. They usually had a extraction slick. That's what you call a Huey, with no gunship. It's a slick, doesn't have a bunch of guns, just 2 door gunners. He was there to pull the team out, and then there would be a trail slick usually that was empty in case something went bad. Helicopter got shot down. He was there to get the crew and get the other helicopter, or the people he went for. And so they'd go across the area, collect information, maps, data, everything, and then move to the LZ and get extracted out while the Cobras are covering their extraction. And of course the other teams around are trying to lay dog, don't get in a fight now, because they're committed. You only had so much resource. The big fear was you might have 2 teams in contact at the same time, which we did have a couple times. Then that split your resources.
What would you do in those instances?
Well, they'd have to send one fire team for one, another fire team for the other. That fire team was 2 Cobras. When those first 2 Cobras left our compound to go address the issue, the other 2 got manned, and they're sitting there in them, listening. And if one of the Cobras said, I'm down to 20%, you better scramble off the second fire team. I was in the communication section. I give the guys the radios going out, they come back when they come in, went out to ground base relays, fire bases, special forces camps, PF camps. Those are provisional forces. There was like a Vietnamese National Guard. Supposed to go up on the hill and protect their village, but actually just went up there as a male party. But anyhow, a lot of times they were on both sides. But then, so the situation there, I was practically seeing every team going in, coming back, going out, or on the radios during the contacts, and we had many. So when this team come out, they might have been out there 3 days. Well, they come back in, they get 2 days to eat a buffalo steak, get a shower, clean up, reload their stuff. 2 more days are going back out again. So they operated like that for a year.
Yeah. You in the comm center, were you able to see a bigger picture as far as where the teams were?
I understand that now from the live, because a team, the 6-man teams, they knew each other tight. I protect you, you protect me. They come in their own little barracks, and it's empty. They're the only ones in. So, and then they go back out. They hardly even saw each other. They might get a meal in the mess hall. We had a little mess hall. Well, they're going to have 2 days out of every 7 actually being in. So their world was tighter and smaller, but they knew when we were cadre or running the unit, you knew more about the whole place and where everybody was at, and you met everybody. Some of these guys never hardly got to, once they were in Vietnam, and once a Ranger company started into action, they knew their team very well. but they hardly got to see anybody else.
What was your tour length? How long were you?
We went in November of '68, and we were there till November of '69. And we had a few guys that came over from the company we replaced. And we were looking at them like, God, these are John Wayne, these are experienced guys. They gave us a little bit of that. You start a new mentality of the way you kept track of things. It's like we get back and we can't remember dates happen because you didn't really want to remember all the dates. And to get a little on the harder side, we were trained and we were young and we were jumping out of airplanes and fast roping out of helicopters, and we thought we were great. Problems happen to other people. We're too dang good to have problems. So that's the way it went in November, December. And then along, I'll get these dates wrong and offend my friends, but I think it was about March we lost our first man. And all of a sudden, everything changed. Nobody said anything much. They looked at each other and tried to avoid straight eye contact. But you knew all of a sudden, this doesn't always happen to other people. It's March. We're going to November. This is going to happen again. Mood, style changed. Did your job. They did it well. They did it to protect each other. But there was a naive edge that came off and a seriousness that came about. Oh, they drink and raise hell and stuff. But nobody talked about somebody again. And you got to understand, when we had somebody contact the field, somebody was wounded, that helicopter went to the hospital. It didn't come back to our compound. Now, if the team come out intact, they come right to our compound, and they pile off, and it's all, here's a beer, they go to the debriefing. But if that helicopter, one of them didn't come back, went to the hospital, that guy just disappeared. Sometimes, well, who was hurt? So-and-so, and how bad? I don't know. They're off, gone. You may not ever find out. He's just not with you now. And it gets whittled down, malaria, health problems, chewed on the company as the year went by, and you don't keep a ledger. Sometimes I always thought we should have, but it was also against military. You don't keep a diary. But it became so tight, and each man and their groups, you make sure nobody gets hurt because something I didn't do right. And the deal is when we would get letters sometimes from back home. So-and-so's in a hospital in Hawaii. He's doing pretty good. But we got some fillers along the way, some replacements. But then the Vietnam War game was going on. It was when they started to announce they were having troop reductions. Well, what the troop reductions was, you didn't get any replacements. So the teams that were left went more, and they called it a troop reduction. Well, those still left doing the job still end up doing more work. Because at the end of the year, we went in as 204. We come out as 73 of us on one plane coming back. And you didn't really realize it until I had a formation at the end of in November and said, will everybody but original D company fall out? And you stood around looking, oh crap. And so that was when some of the sobering, but you had adjusted to what you were up to at the time.
You said the mood changed with that first casualty in March. Was there tension within the unit, or just a very stern, sobering effect?
No tension as far as everybody did their job. It was quieter a little bit. About the bravado kind of slipped away. Now it's professionalism. We had our own little club that we built. They requested we build our own club because we were getting in too much trouble in the other clubs, because we had a image to portray. When we first got there, we didn't have a mess hall set up or anything, and they trucked us down to the 199th Light Infantry, and they fed us. Well, we were 23, 24 years old. We went into a building where they were 18, 19, and 20. And we were pretty rugged looking. I mean, as Rangers, you carried knives that they didn't have, and weapons they didn't use, and clothing. We never wore a steel pot helmet because the guys that went on patrols never wore a steel pot helmet because you can't hear in the side the noise. So they always wore a fabric hat, slouch hat, or boonie hats they call them. And he wore tiger stripe fatigues and camo fatigues, which the regular Army didn't. And so right off the bat, you look different. And it started around, and somebody wrote an article with the Indiana War Memorial. They've got a display about our company now over in Indianapolis at the Indiana War Memorial. He just dedicated it 2 weeks ago. And the guy that was dedicated said, there was a rumor came back that these guys were convicts, and if they got through their year tour, they'd get their sentences commuted or something. So we thought, well, that sounds pretty good. Okay, if you want to believe that kid, go ahead and believe it. You know, it'll keep you away from me. And so we were unique in that regard. We were older. And I think the Army, go learn some of that, steady them up. You don't need young kids that just got out of high school. They went through a couple of months of training, and all of a sudden they were in a jungle and a half world away. The individual replacement. We believe we caused a lot of new utilization of the Guard and Reserve units because we were supposed to not work so well. We were the highest decorated company-size unit for a 1-year period in the whole Vietnam War. Now, there was other units that were there. I mean, might have been there 3-4 years. Well, they were not the same people. But for a 1-year period, with the 204 men in a company-sized unit, there was no unit that was decorated more. And that wasn't by our design. We were reservists. And we used to joke, there was the old TV. There was a cartoon thing, Super Chicken. Nobody's going to remember this. But Super Chicken would get in some kind of a dire straits, and his sidekick, Fred, would start to complain. He said, Fred, don't complain now. You knew the job was dangerous when you took it. And we just turn around at each other and say, doesn't matter. They called us on it. We got the airborne wings. You did the Ranger stuff. You were bad on the post back in the States. Now all that doesn't matter. Now they called you on the job. Now you got to do it. And while I'm on that, from that period, 40-some years ago, there's about 6 guys that never got to go past 23. And for the next 30, 40 years, I'm back here working at the Westinghouse plant, and I got a big-ass problem where something's going bad. Oh, the world's not right. I think back and think about, would Larkins or Smith, how would they like to have my bad day 30 years later? Just shut up and go on. You owe it to them to do right. And when you make somebody a promise, you keep it. Or you commit to something, you stick to it. And that's my only remorse about the Vietnam War. You spent 58,000 Smiths and Larkins, and you quit. We owed them better. If I could talk to congressmen, senators, or whoever it's fine, you make the decisions and you put these things into place. Will you think about the gravity of what you started here? The first man that you caused to fall in one of your commitments because the administration changed, our priorities changed, or something, or we're catching too much flack on the television. Well, you owe it to them. You sent them. So, I mean, that's kind of a thing you live by afterwards.
Yeah.
your word better mean something, and you better keep a promise. And for those that didn't get to come the rest of the way with you, and that's the ones, those were the guys who were the heroes. Like Pete Fagatelli, I was saying, he'd got 2 Purple Hearts. Once you got the second one, you don't have to go to the field anymore. You can drive a truck, you can work in a mess hall, you can go do something else. Pete couldn't leave the other 4 guys. He had to go to the field again. And he didn't get past his 3rd Purple Heart. 20 years later, about 30 of us drove clear to Rhode Island, see his mom, his 2 sisters, and tell them how much it mattered. And that was healing for us and a commitment.
Yeah. And you had that small town, that small group kind of cohesion,
Yeah.
And that connection to each other.
Yeah. For instance, 2 of our fatalities, Smith and Larkins, they stood up in each other's weddings as best men. And we lost the 2 of them. Fate's a strange thing, and how it happens and things like that. And you take back in Evansville, that was happening in a period of a couple months in '69. And we came home. I went back to work, Westinghouse. I was on the floor back then in the plant. And a couple years later, I started non-traditional student, night school, Ball State. Wanted to go somewhere, but you didn't talk about what you did. You came home, Mom, Dad said, "Oh, it's over. I won't hear about it. Oh, it was ugly. I've seen it on the news." Well, never mind. You just let it go. Don't bring it up. It's got no mileage. It didn't do you any service at work. They'd seen Francis Ford Coppola's version of what a Vietnam veteran's supposed to be. So it was best not to say anything about it. For 20 years, you didn't.
Were you able to talk to your wife?
Yeah. That's strange because I was married in '65. We're having our 50th wedding anniversary this September. Same woman, same. She went through a lot. Good farm girl. She put up with a lot of me for a lot of different times. There was a readjustment coming back. When I went to Ball State, this is before '75. The war isn't over, and I'm going as a night student. By then, I've got bell-bottom jeans and hair down to here, and little wire glasses and stuff like that, and going to class, working in a factory. And there was some drifting going on there. That you went young, naive, full of great ideals. It leveled yourself quite a bit on what's important. When are you really got trouble? To me, it came back and somebody's telling me about, "Oh man, I got this really bad trouble. I mean, my car's broke down. I'm 2 months behind." Dude, you don't really have a problem yet. Just go through it. It changes your calibration of things, probably the rest of your life, and the way what things you put value in or not. So.
Did you feel overly patriotic before you went, and did that change any? You said there was some drifting. Did your attitudes change?
Before I went over, I was raised up as a farm boy in the Indiana, Henry County. Come home, get the .22 rifle, go shoot gophers and squirrels and stuff like that. And you saw the stories of World War II and all this, and I was, I guess, patriotic. Not that I was going to charge to the front line right away. I mean, you felt you had an obligation. Vietnam, you don't get to pick your piece of history or time. Oh, let's just wait for a war we all like and serve in that one. No, this was the one you got. It was badly handled on the news. We lost it at home. We didn't lose it there. We won every battle we were in. When you read the history, which I've read about afterwards, I bought about every book I can, especially on their RPs, Rangers, and stuff like that. There's a good book, Stolen Valor, a lot of people ought to read. That's why a lot of your Vietnam veterans, you don't find them in VFWs and military clubs, because my God, you go in there and you find a guy who's still fighting the war Still got the drive-on rag around his head. Well, I wasn't, come on, dude. There is a lot of smoke that's put out there. We found there's lots of exaggeration. Oh yeah, there's plenty of reasons to have problems, and we have guys that had problems. We had a suicide after he came home, and every person is going to handle everything a different way. Some guys had traumatic experiences I never had. Many that were, especially in the patrol groups. But I'm going to say, our country almost tried to started talking them in. I'm a little editorializing here, but our country and our systems almost tried to make them dependent. Told them they're messed up. Oh, you need help. Well, it was like, I remember one guy, we said, well, he's crazy. I said, well, he was crazy when we were in Indiana too. I mean, but there's others that had problems. Mm-hmm. There were so many, especially in our bunch, because you were right on the edge of the sword. We had a couple of guys we had to take out of the field because they became hunters. The other 5 guys couldn't work with them. Somebody said, if 200 come down the trail, he's gonna initiate. There is no room for Rambos in this world. No one guy that just takes on the whole thing. No, you were technicians and very well trained. And these three guys, you got to count on each other. And some of the guys had to come, a couple of guys, they had to come to the management, the officers, and say, we can't take so-and-so to the field anymore. They'd be in, come back out of the field, and be wanting to take a shower, write a letter, eat a buffalo, eat a steak or something. He's down cleaning his ammo and reloading his pack. He's just got in that day. And these things happen to people. I don't know what you put in your genetic makeup that causes it, but others, everybody else, it's a job. I'm doing it well. I'm protecting Charlie and Bill and the three guys with me. We do our missions and we do the job, and it was like ringing the clock. Only this is I used to say, the biggest game in the world. It's still a damn game. Business is a game. Whatever. Now this is probably one of the biggest games you can ever play, and your job is to get through it with the people you brought with you. But I came home, went back to school, got into management at Westinghouse, and I still didn't want to say anything. Some of the strange things, a couple of you guys, buddies, know that you work with, other supervisors say, well, you're a Vietnam veteran. Yeah, well, you could go crazy and go up on a crane rail and do some big event do something wild, and they'd have to help you. They'd put me in jail. I said, yeah, that's what I want to do. No, I don't want to do that. But I've seen the movies. No, I can't tell you about it, and I'm not going to bother to try because you can't understand. And it was 20 years later when we started to connect again. The guys from Company D.
Your unit?
Our unit.
Was any of that, I had a nice opportunity to talk with a lot of different veterans of different military services. And the Vietnam veterans that I talked to, they say that they began to talk about their experiences around the time of Desert Storm, around 1990, when the country came together for that. Did you find that also with your veterans, your guys?
Yeah, because the war was unpopular to anybody that wasn't in it. I mean, a lot of people suddenly found a desire to have a large family, visit Canada, things like that, and all this, and this was all exaggerated. And the whole thing about all the movies that had been made post-Vietnam was my glassy-eyed, dope-smoking, crazy guy that was drafted into the Army and was really displaced. Well, we didn't have these kind of people. You couldn't take your people to the field with you. You couldn't do the job. That was not the way it was. There was very few pieces of Hollywood art that come anywhere close to touching it. The futility of it, yeah. The deal that there was no front line. Everybody, you had to be afraid of your barber, or the people that did your laundry, or things like that. The French lost 175,000 men before we got there. And if they'd read the book, Street Without Joy, if we had, we could have done it properly. But it was like making the same mistake over and over again, which I kind of think we're in the kind of a thing that way now. You win this, give it back. What the hell? The difference, and we'll give it all back later. But as I say, 20 years later, the state of Indiana got interested in us because we had this hell of a lineage. So we had kind of tried to find some people, and a little staff sergeant female over in Stoutfield, Indianapolis, she took us on as a project, Zeta Moore, and she was a historian for the Indiana Guard. Well, she had a way of finding people we didn't have access to. So after a while, we knew where about everybody was that was still around and kicking, and we had our first reunion. Some guys wanted to go, some guys didn't want to go. I mean, I've got one good close friend right here in Muncie. See Bob, and he says, "Bob, you gonna cut your hand?" Nope. That was then, this is now. Can't do it. You don't write it, you don't push it, you don't do it. Okay. It's just a bunch of old guys getting together talking. And you'd be surprised what you have in common. So we started having every 5 years. Now we've had reunions. We've gone to Benning, Ranger rendezvous where the young bucks and kids, and they get all, "Wow, you guys." I said, "Yeah, you guys are great." The kids, the young bucks that we have in the service right now are tremendous. And we shouldn't be the world's cops. We're the American Army. And that's when they should have separated and left the job. But so after I go back to college, I start going to college and getting management, and I worked my way up through Westinghouse, and I was a cost center manager when they decided the Germans bought it and took it somewhere. And so the last 15 years I worked for First Merchants Corporation as a property officer. And the time changed, like you said, when the 9/11 thing happened. Soldiers weren't so ugly anymore. And I bought my first veteran cap, you know? Yeah, I was a veteran. And now the ones that were holding the problems have gone in a respect, and I think that's good now. Because you're talking about less than 1% of the population's ever in the service of a country this size. So that's a pretty small minority. One thing that bothered me, back in the 70s, I'm going through Westinghouse, I look up on the wall, and the HR department, has to put those government required documents, about overtime and all that. And I look down this one, it says that you couldn't discriminate against a Vietnam era serviceman. I thought, oh, why did they have to add that? We do things sometimes, just forget it. But they had to put it on a government document.
Well, you think maybe some of that was fueled by Hollywood's misperceptions?
Probably misperception of those that weren't there. When you talk about a small percentage really involved out of the whole population of the country, the rest of the country was pretty much skewed on who these people were. And they fit right back in communities. They did responsible jobs. They'd had some big responsibilities. So, going to work 5 days a week, doing the cycle times for the next production schedule, okay, we can do that. But because of publicity and utilization of the material, it probably skewed a lot of people's thinking about, to be concerned about it. I'm hanging out with a Vietnam veteran. What, are they going to go off the wall here suddenly? No, he's not. He's just go back. And the big thing was to mesh back in. That's what you want to do. You want to get back home, get that 396 Chevelle, have a cold Coke, a hamburger, get your life going again. Get your life restarted. You kind of had this set out time. But I had a good fortune that one of the fellas, my wife and him and his wife, we stayed in contact with each other after we came back home. And you had each other turn around and say, "Do you remember in May, did that really happen? Am I remembering that right?" You would say, "Yeah, it was right." "No, that was in June." "Oh, and it wasn't that, it was somebody." But when you're going through it, you're having day-to-day activity that has impact on you that you just kind of got to set it aside so that you can keep functioning. That's what we call the gunny sacking it. That in order for you to keep functioning, you got to put some of this away and keep your mind focused on what you're up to right now.
You think that was common? You think a lot of
Yes.
soldiers?
Yes.
Do you think maybe that compartmentalization came back later?
Yes. Some of it rolls back later. Your mind don't really forget these things. You just got it in another file somewhere. But now we see each other. We see some others, and they're getting to scatter out. They're going to Florida, to Arizona, and we have several groups, that little subsets that got Harley and the jackets and stuff. Harley, motorcycle, Vietnam, somewhere that's tied together. I don't know, but they get an opportunity to do it. I can see that, and it's a chance to get out and run with the boys. But you learn to adjust to what it was, and you remember the good things. You remember the fun things or the silly things, or you talk about those. And as this was, at one point, my brother lived in Vienna, Virginia, across the river from D.C., and I'd go down and see him once in a while. And he kept saying, "What do you mean, seen the wall? You seen the wall?" I said, "No, it's there. That's okay." I go, "Well, we could take you to the wall." I said, a couple of times. Well, we took my uncle down for some visit, and we're out driving around. My uncle, who wasn't in the service, my brother was in the Guard but never left the state. But I said, "Well, we're going to stop by the wall for you." Okay. And I thought, this is a long time later. And I thought it was okay. And you come to that, and that is a tremendous memorial, because as you come closer to it, you begin to close up some, and the gravity begins to hit you. And I knew where my year was on that wall, and I knew the names on that wall. And my brother's over there. He said, give me a name so I can look it up for you. I said, "No, you don't need any names." And I walked down and saw one of the guys, Larkins, and I says, "Okay, that's enough. Let's go home. Let's have supper." You don't understand here. They were trying to do something for me, but I had thought it's all under control. It's all, that was, as Bob said, that was then, this is now. Well, no, you come back, and that what you owed those guys, and how much every guy in Vietnam, whether he be Marine, Army, Air Force, Navy. I got a buddy, it's a friend of the Navy. He says, "I was on a carrier. I wasn't even in the war." I said, "Russell, you were scrambling around the deck pulling pins out of bombs." And I says, "Yeah," he said, "it wasn't the same thing." I said, "Yeah, it was the same thing. You did the job you were given to do. We don't get to pick out your whole life path there." He said, "Oh, it wasn't like I was even there." He says, "I was having a good time." I said, "Well, I'm glad, right? But you were there, you did your job, and you were a serviceman, and you're a veteran of Vietnam." And he's right here in Muncie too. So, but what I'm saying is, they're there next door and mowing the yards and things, but they're not. There wasn't this stereotype Vietnam veteran.
Yeah.
They're all individuals. We had city policemen, college students. We had one guy that was a nuclear engineer. He worked at Sandia Corporation. He was a department head at Purdue, and he was a buck sergeant in the Rangers, and he played classical guitar. And we had guys, electrician from a factory, and hell, he climbed up a pole and tapped into the 220 so we could fire up a kitchen. I mean, we had resources and just general people, farm kids, and not a lot of people from the larger cities, because we were from rural Indiana. But they all went and did their piece and said, "Okay, I did it. I filled my commitment. I want to get back, put my life together, go back to having something normal. But they've all had, it's like a mixed blessing. I said I wouldn't want to not have that experience, but I wouldn't want to have to do it again, and I don't look forward to anybody having to do that. And if you have to do that, you got to do it for a good reason and finish what you start out to send these people to do.
And I think, especially today, we see it with our returning veterans. If you send them and you have money to start the war, then you had better bring them home and take care of them when they come home.
Yeah. And don't commercialize it. I'm a big fan. We sent money to the Gary Sinise Foundation. I like his attitude and I like what I read on it. There's some others that look like corporate efforts. I mean, sometimes maybe you got to do that to get to what you got going, but there's a style thing too. And
as your unit was nearing November of '69, and you're getting short,
pucker factor.
how did things change for you personally and for the unit?
Well, you begin to realize, look, this is we're getting short. You get a little spooky, a little nervous. It's never too late for things to go bad. And we were starting to be replaced towards November. This D company was going to go out in this other 75th. We was going to get a new name. Our Guidon's coming home. Since the War of 1812, you know, our lineage is coming home. Somebody else is taking it from here. And so, in order to utilize our experience, our major had to go home. He had broken his arm. That was in the story itself. He fell out of a Jeep. Oh, well, that's a rough, non-combatant military injury. But it wouldn't heal, and he wouldn't leave, and the arm wouldn't heal. And they finally pulled him out. And they got another captain in that was there to start the other group. Well, they decided they wanted our guys to train their guys, and so they wanted to send one of our guys, or one or two of our guys, out with three of them. Now, these are sergeants telling lieutenants, no. Says, we'll take one of them on patrols and train them. But and they got huffy, but they won out. There was almost, they called it a mutiny. It wasn't really a mutiny. I mean, one of these guys said, well, you're refusing an order. He says, well, we can take you down to LBJ. Well, it was Long Bend Jail. He says, okay, you just take all of us. We'll all get on the truck for you. We got decorations and citations, and we're in with the general and everything else. But if you want to send us all to jail, then okay, sir, let's get the truck. Says, okay, don't think you're winning here. So we trained these other people in, but kind of had to do it our way. Our teams and our patrol teams were not going to go to the field with 5 guys that don't know what, never been off the sidewalk hardly, and train them. So this was towards the end of the period. So we trained and got them started out, and then we moved off to the airport at Long Bend, Vanois for about a week because our airplane was scheduled late, and you're laying around getting suntans and trying to make your hair grow longer so you'll blend in with the country. One thing here about the period. I went to Hawaii, met the wife. She had to hawk and borrow money and everything else. She was working at a business machine company to get a week off to get all the way to Hawaii to see me in the middle of the year. And I had my khakis with my infantry braid, my airborne wings, and my CIB, combat infantry badge, and my ranger patch, and the glider, Cochrane boots, you know. The only time I ever got to wear that uniform was into Hawaii and then come back from Hawaii back home, because they didn't want you to go home in your uniform, even though you were decorated and you had your medals, because you were going to get too much hell from the public and the civilization. And it was a shock to us. I mean, Bruno the medic, he had people that had issue with him, but you went there and but all those reasons. And I thought, well, that's a damn shame. So it gets folded up and you never use it. You never get to wear it coming home. But the state of Indiana, when we got out processed from Fort Knox, Kentucky, Governor Whitcomb had Ranger Day, and we went to the State House, and the whole company got together, and we were honored by the state of Indiana when we came home, as many as they could get there, which was about 70 or 80 of us. Some of them, it was like I was home, and I didn't know until 20 years later that Darrell Holder was in a hospital for another year and a half after I was back at Westinghouse and making my money. He was another year and a half getting out of hospitals from wounds in the war, and you just didn't know that. But that was a shame. You had to come slinking back home and hide about it, and you wanted to throw off the trappings of it. And well, like I said, I was going to school, and all of a sudden I looked like a hippie. Well, I wasn't a hippie, but I had long hair, and that was the trend and the stuff, because you wanted to mesh back if you could, but you're carrying some baggage.
In keeping quiet about your service to everybody but your wife, did that complicate things, or did it make it worse, you think, later in life?
I wished we could have downloaded then, because it caused some animosities and attitudes you had for several years. Let's say you could be among a group, you're at a party or something, somebody makes a bad remark about the war or the people, you let it go. You're just going to make a scene here. You're going to look weird. That's going to ground them with everything they've already preconceived about you. Just shut up. If you run into a vet, you can tell if he's real. That's the way I run into those that are not. You don't have it right. There's something smells about the way you're talking. And that's aggravating, because there's folks that wear it for one reason or another, like it's got some mileage, especially now that it's become more acceptable.
Certainly become more prevalent. Our
Yeah.
previous interview subject was talking about confronting someone
Yeah.
here in Muncie.
Well, it's like I got a coin in my pocket. Somebody tells you he's a ranger, he better come up with a coin, because there's just that custom made for the 204. We had to you had to do that just to separate the chat. I was with a lot of guys with a lot of guts.
Would you consider them heroes?
Yeah. I was just there helping. Every guy did his job. Some came to work on a bad day, but they carried through with what they had to do. And as I said, our unit was unique. You had to come back home to the hometown. And you didn't want to have anybody come back embarrassed. Now there's guys that come back with carrying a load they shouldn't have carried. He was with me. I could have done something. No, you can't. That's the way it worked. It should have been, guys that said, should have been me instead of him. How I come back with hypertension and a bad blotch here on my leg that the doctor said would get better after you're home. My skin dry, that's some kind of jungle thing. Yeah, I've seen it before. I don't know how much you got to go. I think about 3 months. He said, yeah, here's some cream. It'll go away when you go home. I came home with a blotch and hypertension, and then you're almost feeling to somewhat guilty about it.
Well, survivor's guilt. Did you?
Yeah, you get that.
Did the reunions kind of alleviate that, and then finally getting to tell your story?
Yeah, right, a lot. Thanks for Indiana. Thanks for Zeta Moore. Got us together. You intrepidly come up and, hey, how are you? What you been doing? Not too much. I'm like working a lumberyard or whatever, and then it kind of relaxes. Oh, I can tell you, it's be like, I remember one morning waking up in my bunk in the barracks, and you're into deep sleep. You're really tired. Your eyes pop open and you see the ceiling, and it's unfamiliar because you were dreaming you were home, and then there's suddenly, oh, I'm not home. Oh crap! Now I know where I'm at, and it was like it just come over you like a flood. Say, oh hell, what this is? This is July. Oh, July, August, September, November. Oh man. Oh crap! You would be thinking about, you'd been dreaming about home, and you wake up and already realize this is the most horrible place I could ever. I was sitting in a motor pool at night, looking at the moon. Armed Forces Television is showing Armstrong step on the moon. Wow! And we're over here doing this, and they're up there, and it was just, there was a lot of these things that set a piece of time in your mind. And it's like I know every Vietnam vet or war veteran, be it Desert Storm, World War II, Korea, can remember some vivid days, and he can remember better the details than he can something he did 2 days ago. Remember the smell, remember the day, remember the sun, remember everything. And it just imprints pretty hard sometimes. But then again, I have never lived so vividly when you really had appreciation for everything. And what was also a great leveler was after you were over there in your group, after about 3 months, all the trappings fell away. The guy that was an executive or the guy that was a policeman or a guy, everybody was just, I'm here. We're all eating the same bad food, wearing the same clothes, doing the same job. People were absolutely honest with each other. If he said, you're annoying me, and if you don't stop doing that, I'm going to try to break your leg, he meant stop it. He is going to try to break your leg. Or if he said, I'm going to be there at 2 o'clock, he's there at 2 o'clock. You didn't have an agenda with each other or role-playing or any of that. It was like, when I got back to work, it was like 2 or 3 years ago. Well, he wound me up like a rubber toy and run me right in the wall. He didn't mean that. And you go, oh. And it was like that. It was this big, well, hey, people have played games with people. You didn't there. You got the guys that had a flaw, the others picked up the part and carried him through that part. You knew people's strengths and weaknesses and didn't really judge them that strong on it. You just knew which way to turn when the problem came up. And well, you didn't pick these people. They weren't your friends. You didn't go out to be associated with them. That's like today, if one of these guys calls me up from Iowa and says, I'll blow the engine on my pickup truck, I don't know how I'm going to get home. Well, hell. You go get the truck gassed up. You may not even like him. You don't want to go bowling with him or something, but you owe him. And if he calls, and if he says, I need you, you'll do it. And there ain't no way else to get that kind of hookup with people. And we aren't all saints, and weren't all want to put up with each other all the time. When you live that close to proximity for a long time, something annoying about somebody will pretty well get to you, and you'll let them know. But it's a connection that's bigger than you, it's bigger than him, and you just know you owe it to each other for that.
Do you think that camaraderie that you have for your unit is shaped by two things? One, you were a National Guard unit, and as you said earlier, you were ribbed because NG stood for no good, but you had something to prove. And two, you as veterans of a very unpopular war also had something to prove that we're good people, we're decent people. How does that, did that manifest itself in certain ways during reunions or when you came back from the service and you're back together in your communities?
When we came back from the war, we were, of course, scattered. We'd had enough of each other. You wanted to see all the rest there is about life. And you lived pretty strong for a while. If you could swing that new Camaro, I'm getting me that Camaro. I'm not taking any food out of anybody's mouth. So you got your value system back in line, about what you're supposed to do with families. I don't know, me and my wife never had any children, and I think that was because of Vietnam, because we were freshly married. A couple of years we was both working. Then along came the Vietnam War, and I thought it was all over, period. You come back and it's not. I made myself some promises. If I get back home and I can swing this, I'll do this. And of course, she'd went off kind of professional activities, so we set that all aside to get life back going, and finally you realize I'm pretty well down the pike. Also, you had an attitude about things, but I don't want to bring somebody around for the next dang problem and stuff. And some of it was your overreaction to something. There was the desensitizing yourself to the normal commonplace that this is life. So for the years intervening, when I'm talking about when we started finding guys 20 years after, you find, what did you do? Well, I went back to the farm. I'm farming 300 acres, and that's it. Okay, and this guy's, he's the plant electrician at the Philco plant and this, and Engie went off to be a nuclear scientist and all this, and everybody kind of, but you all had this common ground. But it was, and I'm kind of redundant here saying again, what it did do in that age of 23 was reset your calibration on your whole value system. And that pretty much sticks with you the rest of your life about what's important and what's not. And when all the comforts are taken away from you for a long period of time, simple things become more valuable. I never saw hot water for a year. We put water in a tank and the sun beat on it. You take your shower after dark because it felt a little bit like it was warm. And indoor plumbing, etc. But it is a great leveler to you. Somebody says, well, I just really could never do this. Yeah, you can. You can be adjusted to change your levels of tolerances quite a bit if you're forced into it. But that's what simplified it so much that it meant personal relationships became much more. There's none of this. It drives me nuts around anymore. My God, a bunch of electrons dance around in front of you, and that satisfies your whole life. Wow. God, here. Here, take this. Come on, you better look up. But
Yeah.
But that was like when you came home, say, take it in.
What value do you think got distilled when you came out of your service and you're gone a year and you come back and you're like, what was most important to you that you hadn't considered before you went to Vietnam?
I think the biggest things that you considered that you wanted to adapt back to when you came back from Vietnam, which is the sheer wonderful thing it is to have the country you had with all the opportunities you had, and if you worked and stuff and did the right thing. I met a lot of good people from this Westinghouse plant. Those were some good days. As you did, and it was one of the big things in the Army had taught me in jump school and things like that. Anybody could volunteer for jump school. They could look at you and say, you're 5'5" and weigh 137 pounds. You want to do this? They didn't say that. You show me you can or can't do it. If you show me you can do it, that's all I'm asking for. I am making no prejudgment on nothing. And they were raw and good, simple, strong individuals that put us through this training, that knew how important it was to weed out the ones that were too weak, couldn't cry. And if you're going to break now, I want to break you now, not when somebody's counting on you a year from now. If you can't hack this and standing in the rain and laying in the mud, let's get you away from these people now. And it began to show you that they made no preconceptions of what you could or could not do. You did it. You make the 4-mile run every day, or you don't. You don't one day, you're done. And it was simple rules. They're cut and dried rules. Nothing's foggy. Or we're going to give you a pass on that because, you just seem like you want it so bad, but you're not getting. No. Punch the tickets and do the things, and you're there. And as mean as them guys were in jump school, the first jump you come out of that at C-130 and you land on that drop zone, I'm alive, I did it. And they run out to you, all right, slap you on the back, no more crap. You got over that. And there was a lot of growing up that come out of that service time that most people never know. But those that have gone through it, and I condo schools and or what is it, the Marine Corps, whatever. It's all a different set. Yeah, it's kind of a club, but it was well done. It was well done then. They're pushing into some things that seem to be so correct now, but you think of some of the things they're trying to do with the Army. Well, they're doing away with the airborne. They're trying, and they're putting ladies in the Rangers. Are trying to. I don't know why we're trying to do this. As I described these things you were doing, you didn't sit there on your patrol and go back to the Porta-John and come back to your ambush. No, you you lay there in grass between the other 5 people, and nature took its course, and you just got it's awful. And there's some role modifications that just aren't natural that I think we're trying to force on people. And that takes away from the strength of the others that says, this is what I've decided to do. As I said, don't bitch now. Fred, you knew the job was dangerous. Write this out. The guy that's with you will know what you've done, and that's all the people you have to satisfy. So.
Let me check.
You got?
I just want to check my notes and see if I missed anything. We've been
I'm
jabbering.
afraid I rambled a
No,
bit.
I got off course. I wanted to ask you, because everybody had a different war. I've spoken with lots of Vietnam veterans, and everybody had a different war. What would you say as you look back and talk to other veterans? What were the differences? First part of the question. Second is, what were the common threads between your service and other Vietnam veterans?
The situation, Vietnam, like I said, we were in 3 Corps area, South, jungle, triple canopy jungle and things like that. That countryside varied from mountains to plains and wherever you were inserted for your service period. I'm talking about the ground forces. Zoomies are going over the top, back in the sidewalk, going to the laundromat that night. But I mean, as the ground grunts that went through the war, we had advantage of when I went out to a relay or something. I was out there several weeks or something. I just living off the fire base that was there and things like that. But I could see the ruggedness and the versatility of it that I saw in young American males living in adversity, making the best out of it, decorating their bunkers and living in the mud and dirt and getting adjusted to it, and not really good food and things like that, doing a risky business and seeing some horrible things and being able to go to work the next day and do it all over again. That was universal to practically everybody there. I remember one time I was out on hopped a chopper out to a fire base. One of our choppers had exchanged a radio with the team. And we were sitting there with the bad equipment ready to come back, and a F-4 Phantom up there, something went bad. They punched out. Guy in front, pilot in the gib, guy in back. And so there was a couple Army helicopters going by, and they just swooped off. And one of them picked up the pilot and brought him right over to our fire base where we was at, laid him out, and then they went back to the job they had. And this young lieutenant, Air Force lieutenant, comes walking up the hill, and he's got his hand, he's sweaty and down to his, clear to his waist practically. He said, man, there I was in my air-conditioned office, and all of a sudden the fire went out here, and I was down in the woods. And I said, yeah, well, it's okay, you're safe now. And so he's sitting there, and I says, well, I got a helicopter coming in here in about 10 minutes. We can get you back to Long Bend, and then we'll call somebody and come over and get you. Okay. And the differences in lives that were going on, and we're sitting there waiting on that helicopter. It's pretty quiet. You can hear some gunfire, and he says, is that gunfire? Yeah. He says, is it close? I said, not close enough that it matters. He said, when's that helicopter going to get here? And I thought, man, you're doing some dangerous thing. You're starting to make us nervous. Now just settle down here. But it was like everybody's interest and time and space, but they never held, not a lot of stress between people. A lot of that was shown. That there was racial stress, no, I never saw it. We had 4 men of color in our company. Our medic was, and we never, Huggins, and we've never had any of that. I don't know what happened later when it got diluted, and we knew, I'm talking 74, 75, it's coming apart. I think management and things went bad. But you didn't worry about a man's color or his job or what he did in civilian life. You didn't care. What are you doing today, and are you doing your job with me? And like I said, we were a tight, close-trained unit. And so you knew you could count on each other.
When did you feel, what moment, I guess, in your year of deployment were you most anxious or fearful?
It was like amazing. It was like that first night when you didn't know what to be. Everything looked dangerous. It says, we're here, we're there, there's flares going off, there's a red alert. What the hell does that mean? As you begin to get immersed in your job, in your function, and then your responsibility took over, you weren't going to let down anybody that was counting on you. I lived in fear that some team would not have radio contact with something. And man, that was your only lifeline. If they didn't know where you're at, you're in trouble. And so it became focus on doing the daily job. And you didn't know Monday from Tuesday from Wednesday. We used to have a joke. Remember Bob said, well, it's Red Sunday. I said, what's that? Everybody bought a Seiko wristwatch. And it so happened that the Sunday announcement was red and all the other days were black, and that's about the only way you do, it's Sunday, it's turned red. But I mean, there was no 9 to 5, there was no work, you covered it 24/7 between the 3 of us or 4 of us that were covering radios and things like that, and it just runs a continuous cycle. We had one stand down day right in the middle of the year. They called everybody in for the field, the Army. They have to count everything. Do we know where every starlight scope is and every rifle and everything? Yeah, so they required an inventory twice a year, which we only got the benefit of one. And everybody came in from the field, and it was like a huge party, and everybody drank beer and filled trailers full of ice and throwed each other in it and cooked steaks over grills and stuff like that. It was like a big party. And they had invited the helicopter guys. These helicopter people, that Huey is the most beautiful sound you ever can hear. It's coming. And these guys had nerves of steel. Yeah, some other times, some of the long war story, but when they'd always say, just don't make me wait, son. Come over the trees, you be there. No problem. But I mean, they stuck their necks out and did risky things that got them in trouble in support of our Ranger teams. We had one go out in the middle of the night in a monsoon and lower a cobra down through the trees to pick up a guy that was snake bit in the middle of the night. And he couldn't find him, and so he said, I'm going to turn on my landing light and you talk me in over you. Well, he's in Indian country. I mean, everybody out there, look, over here. And he walked that in right over him and come down, and the gunner who sat in front got out of his cockpit, put the injured man in his cockpit, and rode the ammo compartment door back in to get a guy out of the woods that was snake bit. And then they wanted to put him up on charges because he beat up the rotor blade on a Cobra. But our CO put him in for a Bronze Star, so can't. It looked bad trying to court-martial him and decorate him. But we've had door gunners get down off a helicopter and go around and pick up an injured man and throw him on the helicopter. You don't know that guy. We didn't know the door gunner. Don't even know his name. He was the guy behind a plastic shield. But he saw a guy go down that wasn't going to make that chopper. And he just unharnessed, and they're under fire. And run out there and pick the fella up, throw him on the helicopter, get back behind his gun, and let's get out of here.
That's a story of uncommon valor that.
Yet he got no decoration. He got no. Somebody had to get him. I'm coming out of here without him. I can't live with that. He just couldn't live with that. I mean, there were one chopper pilot sitting there while his helicopter was being hit by 51 caliber machine gun rounds. He said he was sitting there watching these rotor speed and his hydraulic pressure, and he was holding on, waiting for him to tell him everybody's on board, because he knew if either one of them started to decline, they're over. They're there. It won't come out. And his helicopter come across the woods, and the other slick had come in behind him to try to give him cover and fire. He just said, Millen, you're not going far. Your fuel is pouring out. And his fuel was coming out of his helicopter. He just took it to the hospital and set it down. They had to come in with a truck. I mean, these guys were doing that for those 5 guys on the ground he was pulling out. And it was like, wow, that was cool. And then later you think, oh my God. He said, well, that was the longest 2.5 minutes I'll ever live, waiting for something to stop. But that's what gets me now. Reality is so much more than the hype ridiculousness they put in a movie today, but reality isn't good enough anymore. What? Jeez. Yeah.
That was one of my questions, that obviously our cultural products, Hollywood, books, movies,
Yes.
TV, what do they get right, and obviously what do they get wrong?
Well, as I said earlier, the Rambo cowboy stuff, the one-man army, and ain't no way. That's not real life. What I do, now this is kind of off our main subject, but what I think they've done is desensitize a lot of youth on the gravities of violent action. It belongs in the dang war that we should stay out of, and not every night on the television in some stupid movie where Transformers are eating something or destroying a civilization. It's, as I said, it's a long time since 1968. And you forget how much tech and production's gone on. I was a country kid. Life was pretty simple in Mount Summit in '68. You had the little boys in the blue jackets doing the FFA and things, and you were growing up thinking you were going to go to work at Warner Gear or something. But all that overhype, glorifying war. Somebody said, Saving Private Ryan. There was one piece in that movie where it just locked me up and I lost the next 30 minutes. That was a good piece of work. But they take the edge off of causing injury to people and rude things. As I said, the best way I can say it is, I think too much of that has desensitized. Video games, okay, I'm kind of against that stuff. I don't need no video game nerdhead driver out there in the field with me. It's a little different when the bugs are eating you. You're swelled up with laying on the grass till you can't move, and they make it, some of it look stupid desirable. Every movie that is a war movie is an anti-war movie. If you take that away from it, there ain't no glorifying that stuff. It's the last resort of when you've screwed up everything else. But I mean, it's the people that put people into harm's way that need to think about that when the negotiations fail.
Yeah, because some kids are going to
Somebody's going to pay for this a lot.
Yeah.
And it took a long time to get over that. When I first came back to work, went back to Westinghouse plant, there were some good old World War II veterans. They were still out there in the workforce. And I did a disservice to a World War II vet. He come up, and at this time you're trying to deal with this whole damn thing. I've just had a couple years taken out of my life. And I'm packing some stuff now I wish I didn't have, because when you're fresh out of it, you're not thinking about the funny stories when so-and-so did whatever. You're thinking about the guys you left behind or didn't come home, or all the guys are scarred or lost a lung, or got a arm that don't work right anymore, and things like that. And this good old World War II vet come down to my department to see me. Said, "Son, I appreciate what you're doing over there and protecting, these communists." I said, "I might as well have spent 2 years in a storm sewer." I said, "I didn't buy nothing." And Paul looked at him, "Huh?" And he went off, and it was like, and then I thought later, hell, he's one of the only guys in here that can kind of understand this. And you kind of bid him for it. Mine wasn't World War II. I didn't save us from the Nazi Wehrmacht coming through Portland. I was in a little backwater country screwing around with their Civil War. I was a mercenary practically. And this crap they put on now that, oh, he's a sniper. Well, we didn't like snipers. It's not knights on white horses. We were ambushing people, laying in the weeds, the guys with me, laying in the weeds, taking people out by surprise. That's not, and now they play it like, oh, that's what we all want to be. No, there's a style problem there too. So it turns over what's supposed to be honorable and appropriate, even in times like that, to restacking the deck that the wrong side's up. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. That we've kind of made an industry of, I think, glorifying military service, and I appreciate those that serve,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you do as well, but we ask of them to do things that then we don't want to hear about.
And that are not, they're unnatural and inappropriate and not really good social behavior issues. And then you say, oh, put it all away. Oh, okay, I'll work on that one. But when they were put through it, like these other Vietnam vets you've talked to, well, some guys, and all of our guys, as you've realized, these are all handled differently by different people. You're nothing but the sum total of what you've been through, and none of us have been through exactly the same thing, and how you justify, associate it, put it away, or work with it. Oh, I had some strange questions coming from people that sick their kids on you. A close friend, I'm just working with him, and he said, "You got a little guy here, he's about 8 years old." He said, "Hey, he's in Vietnam. Why don't you ask him how many people he killed?" And I'm, what? What are you doing? That little guy don't know. We don't do this. I don't know you that well, and I'm not inebriated, and I'm not, you are not getting it, are you? And it's like there's no relating that to those people. There's insensitive things happen. And then you got the other guy that wants to talk all about that. You say, maybe you ought to shut up. Or you're talking a little too much about that. I don't think you've had these experiences. And that's why, well.
And that's what I've found with most of the veterans, those who've been actually through it don't want to talk about the worst experiences.
No,
And they certainly don't want to turn it into the centerpiece of their conversations.
no. And you can pretty much kill the buzz at a party pretty quick. If somebody, you idiot, you started talking, stop it, you know. These folks, you're not in that group. You don't want to anyhow. One thing, and my wife has noticed this, we go to these reunions and things like that. I come home, I come home from a gathering, and I'll go to sleep, 12 hours. I am exhausted. We have not said anything, but just being among the guys can just drain you. And it's, I know I couldn't put my finger on it first, but then I realized it's just a physiological thing. It just say that it makes you tired to be with them. And if you, I mean, you'll love them, do anything for them. I love most of them, but it's draining to be around.
To revisit those memories, probably more
Because
than just the men themselves.
There are memories that you bring forward and you know you're conscious of. Then there's a weight on you that comes as says, I'm slipping back there. And you wanted it to be over so much. I tell you, when that C-141 lifted off the ground, headed to Anchorage in November of '69, oh God, I think I'm going to have a life. And every guy says, the freedom bird, it's taking me home. Back in the world. Because you did. You took that place. This is not civilization. This is not old. And one other thing that grabbed you after about 6 or 7 months, you realize what a frail string civilization really is. You take away everybody's cell phone charger and they'll go nuts in the streets in a couple hours a day. So, but I mean, how we don't realize the edge we run, that I can see that place, and people are scrambling in the streets for something to eat. We had to put armed guards on our garbage truck. So, I mean, that's a moot point. You don't hear a lot about it. But to go out to the dump, to keep the people from climbing on the truck after your garbage. And when you're 6 months ago in Indiana, that's a concept that's just something that you see it on the television. It's not the same as you see it in real life. Yeah. That civilization can be disrupted quickly, and a new value system can come in and replace it. It's not anything like you think might be possible. But what?
But you talk about that resilience of the American soldier.
Yeah.
The common GI just adapting and overcoming.
We were building basketball courts and building outdoor movie setup and the ingenuity of the types. It's like, for instance, we're a little older. I had these radio equipment, and according to the Army hierarchy of structure, I had to give my radios that were defective to the $1.99th. That's what we call the 199th Light Infantry. Had to give them to them, and then they would go to their echelon of repair. Well, I give them a couple of radios, I don't get nothing back. Well, yeah, need that stuff back. So we get a Jeep. I drive to 2 Field Force with a buddy, and we drive around, find a bunch of government employees that are actually doing the repair work. And I find this guy and say, well, we got some radios. You get the $1.99 stuff? Yeah. Well, we live off their edge, and says, is there anything you need or something we can do for you? I need to get this supply chain shortened. The guy said, well, I don't know. We just needing some. Do you have the alert rations? And we had this special freeze-dried food that you took, which was much better than the common rations. a couple cases, I could do that pretty good. I says, got you, Sarge. Went back compound. Hey, boys, need a couple cases of lerps. And took them to him. So from then on, I was taking my radios right past this other people and taking it to them. And we'd take it in one day, pick it up 2 days, bring it back. And all of a sudden, I'm in my little combo hooch, and Angry Cats, there's a field telephone, says, Major Heckman wants to see you. And I thought, me? Ugh, that can't be good. So I go up to the officer quarters, and the company commander, this George Heckman, he was a straight shooting, very efficient officer. Everybody respected him. And I posted for him. He says, Bustle, got a letter here. I'll read it to you. So he read this letter. It was from the 109 Light Infantry, that they had realized what I was up to, and I was usurping the string of command and then jeopardizing, blah, blah, blah. And he said, what's the story on this? And I told him. He said, might get another one of those. And so if you're doing your bit, and that's the way, you did what you needed to do to support the people you were responsible for, to any level it took to do it, including ruffling feathers and somebody else. We didn't care. Come on, some guy beating a desk, I don't care. Your forms ain't filled out right. Get a life. We need this stuff. But that's one of the things we came from, this bunch being a bunch of NGs, guardsmen. They all had lives. They had other stuff. They had other things. You get all hung up about this paperwork? We're not hung up about this paperwork. What are you going to do? Send me to Vietnam or something? What? be upset with me? I can't go to town Saturday night? It doesn't matter to me. I'm going to do what I need to do to perform for our people, and they appreciate it too. So,
And like I said, your priorities changed. Your priority was your people, not necessarily observing the chain of command.
yeah, you weren't going to. We were not jeopardizing lives or stealing ammunition from their bunkers or something. Come on.
As we wrap up, what's one thing that you would like future students or scholars or researchers who may view your interview, what would you like them to know about your unit and your service?
Have the empathy to know these fellows didn't set about to do this. They weren't going off to war to cause mayhem and destruction. They're just regular folks from the neighborhood. That when you're given a responsibility or a job to do, and you signed the paper, you held up your hand, I'll support the Constitution, all that, take it real damn serious. And we know, the company does, and we have been told later, that from the performance we did and what it meant to have these people with personal commitments to each other was definitely not a bad thing. They were worried more about the impact it would be on you if something went amok. Well, of course it's going to go amok. But you were better prepared when you knew each other, when you had a commitment to the people you were with. And some people are, guess we can't talk about aptitude tests, but I can't, there's people that have a propensity towards a line of work or something, or they're going to do better if you're left in the woods. Good God, those SAS dudes, if you'd went out and dumped them in the jungle and come back in a month, they'd be heavier, bigger, stronger, and they'd build a compound. I mean, we run among all kinds of people that were self-sufficient, confident, and almost reveled to the challenges. And you do, after a while, in the kind of unit you were in. If we're going to run 4 miles, I'll run the 4 miles. I'll run another 100 yards or stuff like that. There was a highly level of competitiveness among the people in the training and all that. But I think mainly what you take from it is you don't get to pick a lot of times what you get involved with. That's almost like life. You think you got the whole plan laid out. I want to be in a war that's noble and rewarding and want to stop global warming and all this. Well, that'd be really nice, but you didn't get that one. You got this one. What you get, you do, and you do it well, and you do it in support of the people that you're with. And it's like teams. I know about teams, and there's a lot more to it than the T-shirts match. That's a start. But it takes real stress, and boy, you can get it, to see people rise to levels they never thought they could operate at. And the only way you're going to know that sometime is to be put in a situation where you get it. Because everybody, it's like I've seen it in other things later, that you don't know how you're going to do when it's thick and hard and bad. But you'll be surprised what you'll do with the guys. And I still blame Razor and Ted. If we just hadn't gone to jump school, and if Dan Quayle had been in Company D, he might have been president. I don't know. It's just, how do you pick a path through time? But I'm glad it got better for our servicemen now, that they are getting some respect. And they are trying to make a little bit more, get a little more realistic in representation of these people. I can't believe the stuff these kids go out and do now.
Yeah. And they look back and can't believe what
you say. We were down in Georgia and it's a Ranger rendezvous, and going on, how'd you do? Well, I was there. I didn't have a choice, you know. That was a time at the time, and they've studied our tactics. Still are applied, not in maybe the desert, because it's a different thing. Yeah. We didn't have all this high-techy stuff we got today with infrared, and you could go in the woods, you smell as bad as the woods, you look as bad as the woods, and you can be there and disappear. And our guys knew how to do it. And the best I can say is they were trained to do a job. They did the job and come home and went back in society. And for on the most part, everybody's done pretty well. We had people with issues, of course, stress. Some guys never got over some of the injuries they received. You think of it then, but it cost them the rest of their life.
Yeah. There's always a human cost.
Mm.